Hello, it's Mark and Pete.
Hello, colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. And this week's conversation is the UK. Why don't we make anything anymore? It has been widely perceived that UK manufacturing is on a decline. In fact, many people throughout Europe, as well as the UK, feel that Europe has suffered dramatically due to the recessions. Well, interestingly, the Manufacturers Organisation actually has issued some statistics recently which shows quite the opposite view, that manufacturing is doing very well, both in terms of skills and innovation, investment, as well as investment in key areas like engineering, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, etc. So, with that in mind, Pete, what's your view on the state of manufacturing in Britain today?
Well, you may be surprised to hear, or may not, but I'm not as optimistic as this manufacturing organisation. What was the name of it again? I'm not
EEF.
The EEF. Well, I'm not as optimistic as they appear to be. I mean, they're quite upbeat, and I think that manufacturing Britain suffers from some underlying problems. One is the lack of ownership and investment from within Britain itself. So you get a lot of ownership of companies coming from outside. Now, the problem with that is that means that decisions made are not for the benefit of the local people. And one of the things that I'm very keen on, and we're very keen on here at the Mark and Pete show, is that the way to run companies and the way to run countries is to think locally. Because when you do that, you're doing things for the benefit of local people and making decisions, or the decisions are made by local people. So I think that generally that's a problem which ends up with decisions being made which are bad for the country or the locality where the manufacturing company is. But also I think that manufacturing could be seen as succeeding if you say, well, we're shifting quite a lot of goods. But that could be a temporary success, and that's what I think we're seeing. I think we have an underlying problem, and in two ways. One is, I don't think that the infrastructure of the country is set up to cope well with large-scale industry, so there's not room for growth for industry.
Yes.
And when I say I don't think that, I think that's widely known that the transport links in this country are not up to the standards of other countries in the world. And the other thing that I would say is that also the financial system, or rather, I suppose better, the economic system, the way the economy is run, including the finances, but also including the way you employ people and the sort of demands made on employers to provide extra benefits is especially bad for small manufacturing companies. So I would say that it's great if manufacturing is looking like it's doing well because it's shifting lots of goods, and that's what we want to see. But there are underlying issues that need to be addressed. And that's my take on it.
Exactly. There are underlying issues, but I suppose that the wider scale of things is that in the past, the great British industrial might that we once endured during the Industrial Revolution took a slightly more longer-term view. So one of the reasons I think that it's perceived that manufacturing is not doing very well, to your point, is that things are very, very short-term. If you look at the way that the whole business model tends to work, particularly for a lot of publicly quoted manufacturers, everything is so short-term that investment in skills, investment in equipment, is not what it once was, for example, 50, 60 years ago. Would you agree?
Oh, yes. I mean, investment is well done. And I mean, investment is well done. And it seems that that investors have been fooled by fashions of the time in investments. I mean, you see people wearing ludicrous clothes, like yourself, of course.
Well, of course.
Because of the latest fashions. And I do like the latest fashion of the pink bow tie. I just wouldn't have worn it there.
No.
But the fashions of the time change, and fashions of the time for clothing, well, it doesn't matter. You can just buy some new clothes or have them altered at your tailor. But if you make decisions in investment wrong, it can have far-reaching effects. And take, for example, the enthusiasm for investing in IT companies that became very a big feature of the economy in the 1990s. You would have, now looking back at it, we say, well, hey, come on. Well, where are they actually going to make their profit from? Come on, be sensible. Yeah. But people invested in that rather than in manufacturing, because manufacturing is boring and old-fashioned and maybe doesn't yield such a quick profit.
Well, now that's the thing that I want to bring.
But is that true?
Exactly. Yeah. That's perception, isn't it? Because one of the things...
Yeah, I guess that's right. It's a problem with perception. That is the problem.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I want to get to as part of the point about this issue is, are we making anything anymore? So there are different ways of making things, of course, as you say. There's technology, there's engineering, and, of course, people's perceptions of
yeah, I mean, there's also intellectual property, so coming up with ideas, new designs, new inventions.
Exactly. So the question really is, why is it that we don't make anything anymore? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of lighten the tone a little bit with just something which is more of a reflection of people's perception of our dear, lovely land, old Blighty, and really just to sort of get a sense of...
I'm going to stop you there, Mark.
Yes.
I have this feeling that
I feel
somehow
a feeling
foreboding.
I feel a little
you're
poem
going to,
going on.
That's what I was going to say. You're going to read a poem, aren't you?
I think it's necessary.
Please give him a chance. I mean, it worked out all right before. The poem, there's just a possibility it might be good. So keep listening. Anyway, go on, Mark. Yeah.
Anyway, so then, our listeners, this poem is entitled "The Blight on Blighty." So,
we're listening.
Britain once had a great industrial crown, a sceptred isle bejewelled with pride. But the empire has crumbled, Britannia rumbled, its manufacturing simply cast aside. Where are the weavers, the true believers, the ones who provide the spark? Where are the crafters, engineering drafters, proud of our industrial mark? Where are the makers, the commercial shakers, entrepreneurs wanting to invest? Where is the science, the trading defiance, the brains to build for the best? So why don't we make anything anymore? Are the banks unbalanced and broke? Is it sloth, ignorance, or foreign imports? Or has Britain's hopes all gone up in smoke? All we now make are big mistakes. Is it really any wonder? Can the government rally and make amends? Oops, no, they've made another blunder. Our glory days are long but gone. Success lies in the distant past. Our greatest pioneers are history. For them the die is cast. Kingdom Brummel made a fine tunnel, bridges, railways and much more. With Joseph Swan the light came on. Let's reflect on cat's eyes from shore. Stephenson's trains put Britain back on track. Graham Bell invented us the telephone. Tim Berners-Lee invented the worldwide net. British scientists made Dolly the clone. So where are the thinkers, the mechanical tinkers? We're in battle with commercial fatigue. Where are the explorers, the leading scorers? We're descending the trading league. Hark, there's hope for this nation's plight. A cunning scheme of money for old rope, by thinking like a nation of shopkeepers to avoid the slippery slope. This ignominious blight on our reputation, while Britain is feeling the squeeze, can be solved with a bargain for Blighty. Let's sell the lot to the damn Chinese.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, you did well there. I think actually the Chinese could probably afford to buy up most of British manufacturing if we put it up for sale. Why don't we put it on eBay?
I didn't tell you how much we were going to sell it for.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Well, I'll be looking.
Here is about perception.
Or on Gumtree, maybe.
I'd like to sort of ask you a few questions here, because although that's a very sort of traditionalist view that we're a sort of an old metal bashing sort of weaver making sort of nation, and I know that's very much reflective of the Industrial Revolution. But let me ask you your view on what would be your opinions in terms of the top manufactured exports that come from this country. So there are a number of different sectors, but what would you say sort of leads the way in sectors?
Okay, top manufacturing export.
Yeah, so for example, there are different categories.
Okay,
so
all right,
I'll
okay.
give you a clue.
Give me
might be one of them, but transport
Sorry,
is another.
What was that? What was the first one?
So metals might be one,
metals,
transport is another. But what do you think leads the way in terms of our manufacturing exports?
Okay, I'm going to go with textiles.
No, it isn't. That's actually on the list.
It's
actually on the lowest on the list.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking misconceptions. I mean, I know that there still is a textiles industry, but it's thought of as being something from the past, so I was trying to be clever there and say...
It's relatively small.
Oh, okay. Right, let's go for... these are not just raw products like that. They're manufactured items, so cars?
No. Well, I'll tell you the top
cars.
It's actually mechanical and electrical equipment.
Okay, it's that broad. Okay, mechanical and electrical equipment. Okay.
What do you think is the next sector that would be on the list?
Well, maybe let's go for one that may be thought of as being big. Let's go for IT equipment.
No, it's chemicals. So it's interesting that people's perceptions of, what is it that we actually do?
But like pharmaceutical chemicals, or like used for manufacturing. What are we talking about?
Well, that's interesting you mentioned about pharmaceuticals, because that would clearly come under the chemical sector.
Yeah.
But when it comes to things like skills and innovation, so, companies do invest in skills and innovation, and they try to stay ahead of the competition. So, interestingly enough, that things like electrical equipment and manufacturing is clearly an area that a lot of companies do see a lot of value. But pharmaceuticals, incidentally, actually is one of the highest areas where R&D, research and development, paves the way in this country. But I think in terms of perception of manufacturing, I think what I want to really get to is a lot of people feel that going into manufacturing doesn't pay very well. So let me ask you a simple question here. So there is a statistic, again, which is current, the latest stats that have come out from government. And when you look at it...
This is British government stats you've got there.
Yes, right. Yes, and basically what it does is it gives an annual average pay for graduates with degrees. So what would you say would be...
Okay, right. This is like a quiz, is it? What do I get a prize?
It's like a quiz. So let me ask you, how much do you think the average graduate could earn by simply going into, say, engineering?
Okay, so this is graduate, so it's entry level, but for a graduate.
Yes.
Okay, engineering. Now you see, I've got the idea here that you're saying it's not what people would commonly think. Engineering's reason. I'm going to go for intro. I'm going to go for 20. How close do I have to be? Nearest 1,000? Sort of thing?
Well, yes, within a couple of thousand. Yeah.
Within a couple of thousand. Okay, I'm going to go for say 28,000.
No,
28,000.
Nowhere near.
25,000.
Nowhere near.
24. Okay, it's the wrong way, is it? Okay, 30,000.
Well, in actual fact, the perception...
35,000.
Let me give you the stats. The actual statistic is, on average, that an engineer would earn just over £42,000 as a result of going into that profession.
That's amazing. Isn't it? Amazing.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Just for handling a spanner. I mean, that's a lot of money.
There again, you see, is the perception is not necessarily spanner. I mean, they're using technology, they're using engineering modelling, they're using science.
Yeah, we're including design engineers, research.
Absolutely, that's the point. I mean, those people going into medicine, how much do you think they can earn?
Okay, medicine. So if you're talking about medicine, you mean doctors, don't you? Generally, not nursing. So. And medical profession tends to be paid more, so I'm going to give them the same. I'm going to say 40,000 for them as well.
Well, you're getting close. It's actually 45.
Final offer.
£45,000, which actually is actually that's way above the average salary, of course, which is just around.
What is the average salary?
I think the average salary is around 21, isn't it? 21,000 approximately. I would ask you one more question, which is what do you think the average salary is at entry level going into education?
Okay, education. Now, teachers...
because this is a contrast to service. So you've got manufacturing on the one side, service on another.
Now, I think I have the general perception here. I think that they don't get paid as much, say, as doctors and engineers. So I'm going to go with 25,000.
No.
Final offer. Oh, no. Okay. 28,000, which was my first offer before. 28,000.
Well, you're heading in the right direction, but you've still given them less than £30,000. Exactly.
Oh, is it? I win. Yeah.
Congratulations.
I got that one. Yeah.
But I think that what it does is that look, at the end of the day, there's a generation of people that are coming through that have the perception that engineering and manufacturing doesn't offer the rewards that perhaps they once did.
Did we cover people in... I mean, I don't know how you would do it. How would you say someone working in manufacturing? Is there a figure for that?
Well, it doesn't.
I mean, you had to think of. I mean, manufacturing is quite a broad.
It is a very broad
job, so you can't. But engineering is a key part of manufacturing, and that's. I mean, it's interesting because I used to be a teacher, and during my time there, I would go to jobs fairs. I was teaching in what in Britain we call secondary schools. So this is people up to the ages of 18. Before they go off to train for sometimes professional qualifications like at university, etc. So I were looking at job fairs there, and people would come to the job fair and advertise different professions. Now, the people in that school, if they had pushy parents, would be, or if they were just thinking, I'd like to make a lot of money, would go for professions like medicine. They don't want to become a doctor. Or they'd go for a pharmacist, so another side of the medical spectrum in terms of jobs. Or they'd want to be a lawyer.
Yes.
Make money. Now, I used to sit there sometimes as being the example of a teacher, and no one would come to my little table which said teaching. No one would be interested. You'd be sad and lonely all evening. The perception was, well, you're not going to make any money at that. I seem to remember it wasn't as bad, but the engineering table wasn't very well frequented. It was basically lawyers or medics was the main profession they wanted to go into. Thinking, well, that's the profession that's going to make money. But it seems that that's not the case. You can go into engineering and make quite a reasonable living even straight away.
Yes.
I mean, I'm saying that because I want people listening to this to be encouraged to go into engineering because but it's true, isn't it?
I'm going to give you a statistic in a moment after a very important little clip that we have, which really sort of, again, highlights people's perception about what's going on and the decline in Britain's manufacturing.
Let's visit one of the British Motor Corporation's huge machine shops and see the kind of equipment that is being used for the production of engine parts.
60 years ago, Britain's share of the world's manufactured exports was around a quarter. There was talk of a new Elizabethan age of British economic and technological achievement founded on the fruits of groundbreaking wartime research and backed by the financial might of the city. Britain was about to launch the world's first jet airliner.
I now open Calder Hall, Britain's first atomic power station.
She was on the verge of becoming the first nation to generate nuclear power. She was a close second to the United States in the development of the computer.
We have been able to send the worldwide turnover up and up over the years.
Her factories were working flat out, producing all the materials demanded by a society on the verge of prosperity after the pain of rationing and post-war reconstruction. 1/2 of the working population was employed in manufacturing, from massive plants to tiny workshops. Unemployment was negligible.
Well, that was Nicholas Comfort, the author of a book on manufacturing in Britain, on the subject we're talking about today. And he just had a little presentation on a BBC TV programme that was on about a year ago.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that was highlighted there, again, does show that Britain at one point really was on the cusp of even greater success. But obviously, as we know that our manufacturing has declined in terms of the proportion of our GDP, so as you know, that we are much more reliant on our service sector. But it is encouraging to see that 6 out of 10 companies will increase their training budgets in the next 2 years. And 3/4 of companies plan innovations to export to new markets in the next 3 years. And I think that with that in mind, it's very evident that in order to get ourselves out of this somewhat, shall we say, economic plight, where we have massive debt, where countries like Germany have succeeded so well to have a much more balanced portfolio, manufacturing is clearly vital to the economic prosperity of the United Kingdom. So while that's really where we are today, really more the question has to be, if we don't manufacture anything anymore, what do we need to do to move ourselves forward? Mm-hmm. What's your view?
Well, I think what the key is a change in the attitude to our in the political attitude. I think to relationships between different countries, and the attitude to engineering in this country, engineering and manufacturing, in this country. So the two things. One is, I think we need to have good trading relationships with countries across the world. In other words, we need to stop being part of the European Union, which stops our country.
That's an important point, because Britain is going to be going through some crucial decisions in the near future as to whether we should be in or out. So to that point, do you say then that we should vote as a nation to come out of the European Union?
Yes, well, I do, but I do think, but that not because I think we shouldn't be part of Europe or try and trade with the countries in Europe, but rather because we want to do that and trade on our own terms with countries around the world. And unless that's done, the negotiation of such arrangements with other countries are going to be done by the European Union, who, of course, because there's such a huge block of countries, all lumped together, countries that are not similar in economy, you'll end up with arrangements to be made that don't favour quite a few of the countries, including our country. So that's one side of it. Being able to have good trading relationships with countries that are friendly with Britain and that would love to be able to trade with them, like China. In a recent BBC programme, one of the heads of one of the biggest car manufacturer in China was on the programme and said, well, we don't want to deal with the EU, we want to be able to deal with Britain, and that wasn't on the cards. And I think that that's vital. But within the country itself, there needs to be really an attitude towards manufacturing that you allow people to innovate, that you encourage the setting up of companies within the country. So these big engineering companies started small, allow small companies to grow, to build on their customer base. How do you do that? By removing the excessive regulation and especially employment regulation, but also regulations on what you can manufacture.
Okay. So
so freeing up, I'm sort of talking about freeing up the economy to encourage small businesses to grow.
Okay, well, I agree with that. But, I mean, in order to make it in Britain, the foundations of any modern economy should surely be that we do maintain standards. And one of the challenges I appreciate that while, particularly in the chemicals industry, there are some constraints of what you can do and can't do, purely by European government legislation, as opposed to legislation that may be applicable to, say, China or America and so on. So I do agree with that point, but the one thing that I would say is that if we are to prosper, yes, having good relationships with other countries to trade is important, and we need to find a balance between how we trade with Europe and how we trade with other nations. But the source of the problem, in my opinion, is that we're not seeing enough incentives at either education to draw people into manufacturing, or that manufacturers, whether that's on a large industrial scale globally, or more importantly locally, to build those grassroots and to grow out. At the moment, what's typically tending to happen, as you even saw in that clipping earlier, is the fact that we are finding that there are more foreign manufacturers investing in our nation, and they are utilising our talent, but that isn't necessarily a British run operation. So in order to really grow out of this problem, we need to put more longer term investment, and I emphasize the word longer term as opposed to short termism, and that covers both, as I said, from education right the way through to special tax breaks for small to medium sized enterprises, as well as to a certain extent some of the large manufacturers. That's where I think the focus needs to be. We've not seen that in the last 30 years.
No, we have not. And the listeners may not be aware, but I've just been through a move. I've moved to live in a different city. I now live in Liverpool, and Liverpool has had problems with losing its manufacturing. In fact, losing a lot of its biggest industry in shipbuilding, and through this change, the government has tried to help the economy by giving tax breaks. But they're giving tax breaks to foreign companies coming in and investing in the area. And there's a perception that that's helping the area because you're giving people employment. Well, that is, that's a good thing. But if you're bringing in a big company whose concern is not with the economy of the country or even of the local area, but with their own well-being, they're going to come and take advantage of the tax breaks. Now, I've just had a bit of a mental blip. I can't remember the name of the company. Perhaps you'll remind me. There's a company that bought Jaguar. That's Tata, that's it. Now, there's a Jaguar plant here in Liverpool, and they have bought it up, and they're still manufacturing in Liverpool, taking advantage of these tax breaks and taking advantage of, I believe, advantageous planning to change the layout of the manufacturing place. I believe that's the case, but something along those lines. Things are in their favour at the moment, but they've just started manufacture in 2 other countries, and that seems to be in the minds of the local people. I was speaking to a mechanic who was actually doing up my car, so I was spending time schmoozing him, being nice to him because he had my car under his spanner, and I wanted it done well. So anyway, I was having a bit of a talk with him, and he was saying that he believed that from having spoken to people who work in the company, that there's a fear that particular plant, the one in Liverpool, is going to close down.
Yes.
And so therefore the whole policy has worked against what they're trying to achieve. I think that's just one example of...
Well, actually, that's only one example, but they should have learned their lesson. And the reason I would like to also draw your attention to...
by the way, the car's fine.
Well, that's very good. That's good to know. Good to know. Yeah. But the important point is that that's good as an example in the north of England, but in the south there was a similar issue just slightly earlier with Ford, where Ford decided that they were no longer going to make their vans in Southampton, and essentially there were government incentives. Ford were encouraged to stay, and there were some tax incentives. However, that was very short term. What's happened? The plant has closed. They've taken their manufacturing off to the east, and what have we gained? We've lost great talent, skills, which cannot be replaced. And of course, as a result, that means that the company, Ford, has gained enormously. But has this country? No. And once again, that's a perfect example that we are reliant on foreign manufacturers. And that's not to say that we don't want to encourage that. But I come back from another perspective, which is what we have to do is take a different viewpoint on this, and a longer term view, is that we should be encouraging our engineers, our manufacturers, our chemical companies to prosper and to look at British companies and to grow those British companies, as opposed to investing in the foreign bases which utilise our talent.
Okay, I just want to say something here, because listening to you speak about the problems of catering to the whims of large global companies, I suppose, who can well have a foreign base, but they're certainly, if they go into lots of different countries, most of their enterprise is foreign to Britain, and it seems like you're being a little bit xenophobic, and but I was saying a similar thing. And you're not, because what we're saying really is that each country would benefit from the attitude that there needs to be a strong manufacturing base in that country. Not just Britain. Each country needs to have a successful economy in order to have wealth creation within the country such that it is a successful country able to look after its citizens and all that sort of thing, to keep them healthy and wealthy and wise. For a healthy country, you need there to be good manufacturing. Now, that doesn't mean industry, of course. It doesn't mean industry if you take it in the terms of manufacturing and other big industry. You could have a whole economy based on farming. You could have a whole economy based on on different sorts of economy. It could be a very local economy. It could be that in a particular country, it could be that everyone is self-sufficient. But that's just taking the localism to extreme.
Yes.
However, what you don't want is a company that is bigger than all the countries making decisions for its own benefit, because then all the countries involved are weakened by the strength of this company. Just because even if there's a temporary advantage, it's not a long-term advantage. And so it's thinking long-term and thinking local is the way to have a healthy economy across the world, by each country, each locality being not completely self-sufficient, but in control of their own economy. I mean, we want trade. If you're completely self-sufficient, you're not trading with others. That can be to your advantage. But if you're in control of what's happening in your own economy, then you can make decisions that benefit your own citizens. And that's what we're talking about, not just for Britain, but for every country rather. See, it's slip of the tongue there, that's what we're talking about. Now, companies seem to rule the roost. Yes. What we want is for countries, that is to say, the people in the country, to be deciding what's happening in their own country, and also benefiting from the manufacturing.
I agree. And I think that one of the things is that our governments must therefore do everything possible to establish a more competitive business environment and to encourage those local manufacturers and businesses to really prosper. But of course, there is a wealth of other things that we can cover. But more importantly is that what do you think, listeners? There's more on this subject. So we would like to hear from you on... I mean,
maybe there's some entrepreneurs listening who have ideas that we miss. They can tweet us at Mark and Pete.
Join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.